Okay. Good morning, students. Welcome back to the English class. Today we are beginning with the chapter Mrs. Donovan's Dog from your reader. Now, before we begin, let us read about the author. The author was born on October 3rd, 1916 and died on February 23rd, 1995. He was a British writer and a veterinary surgeon. He has written about his experiences as a veterinary surgeon in a series of books about animals and their owners. These semi-autobiographical stories are collectively known as All Creatures Great and Small. Now here it tells us that the author James Harriet was a veterinary surgeon, meaning an animal doctor. So this story that he has written is one of his personal experiences. So let's begin with the chapter. Before that, some two lines are given to you about the lesson. This extract from Let Sleeping Vets Lie depicts the character of Mrs. Donovan, an old and eccentric lady, genuinely admired for her profound love and concern for animals. So, the main character in this chapter is Mrs. Donovan, who loves animals and she has love and concern, meaning she loves dogs and she also cares for them. And she is also admired for her ability to get sick animals healed, okay, and that is why she is called old and eccentric. Eccentric means sometimes not very sound in your mind, so that is why it's called eccentric. Now, old Mrs. Donovan was a woman who really got around. No matter what was going on in Darrowby, weddings, funerals, house sales, you would find a dumpy little figure and walnut face among the spectators, the darting black button eyes taking everything in, and always on the end of its lead her terrier dog. Now, the description of Mrs. Donovan is that she was a woman who really got around, meaning that she was seen everywhere in Darrowby, whether it was some wedding, whether there were funerals, or maybe there was house sales. Every occasion Mrs. Donovan could be seen because she was very interested in getting information about everything. She was a very active person and she wanted to know about everything happening in her hometown. And along with her there was always a dog, and that was a terrier. Terriers are small and active dogs. When I say old, I am only guessing because she appeared ageless. She seemed to have been around a long time, but could have been anything between 55 and 75. Now he says that she is old, but he says her age could not be guessed at because she could be anywhere between the age of 55 and 75. Okay, she certainly had the vitality of a young woman because she must have walked vast distances in her dedicated quest to keep abreast of events. So, she seemed to be a very active woman and she had maybe walked vast distances, meaning she had gone walking long distances because she always wanted to keep abreast of events. Keep abreast meaning she always wanted to know about what was happening and what were the latest events. Her activities took her into almost every channel of life in the town. One of these channels was a veterinary practice. So now she wanted to be active and she wanted to know about everything going around, and that is why she knew most of the people in town, and one of her channels through which she could get information was the veterinary practice, that is where the doctor practiced at his clinic, the animal doctor. She could talk at length on the ailments of small animals, and she had a whole armory of medicines and remedies at her command. Her two specialities being her miracle working condition powders and a dog shampoo of unprecedented value for improving the coat. She had an uncanny ability to sniff out a sick animal, and it was not uncommon when I was on my rounds to find Mrs. Donovan's dark gypsy face poised intently over what I had thought was my patient, while she administered calf's foot jelly or one of her own patent nostrums. Now, she had an ability to talk at length about the ailments of animals. That is, she could talk about the different sicknesses of animals, and she also gave her own medicines and conditioned powders, that is, here it says nostrums. Nostrums are medicines that are prepared by unqualified persons. Okay. Now she could sniff out a sick animal, that is, she always came to know where there is a sick animal, and she was and it was not uncommon when I was on my rounds to find Mrs. Donovan's dark gypsy face poised intently over what I had thought was my patient. So, whenever she came to know that an animal was sick, she was always present over there, and Dr. James Harriet always found her in those places where there was a sick animal. She had the irresistible mystic appeal of an amateur. On top of that, there was her habit, particularly enduring in Darubi, of never charging for her advice, her medicines, or her long periods of diligent nursing. Now, she was also loved by everyone, and it was not only because she loved animals, it was also because she gave free advice, she gave free medicines, and she never charged anyone if she took care of a sick dog or a sick animal. Since she inhabited the streets of Darubi all day and every day, I often encountered her, and she always smiled up at me sweetly and told me how she had been sitting up all night with Mrs. So-and-so's dog that I had been treating. She felt sure she would be able to pull it through. Now, whenever she met the doctor, she would always tell him about what all she was doing for a sick dog, whether she was taking care, or that is nursing a dog, sick dog, or whether she had given her medicines and all those things. There was no smile on her face, however, on the day when she rushed into the surgery while Siegfried and I were having tea. Now, the doctor tells about one such incident when she came to his clinic, but on that day she did not have a smile on her face. The doctor and a man named Siegfried were having tea. Mr. Harriet, she gasped, "Can you come? My little dog's been run over. He slipped his collar and ran in front of a car," she murmured. "He's lying in front of the school, halfway up Clifton Road. Please hurry." So now she comes over there and she gasped, that is, she was not able to breathe properly, and still she said, "Can you come?" And then she says that her dog had been run over because he had slipped his collar, meaning the leash on which he was tied had come off, it became loose, and he had run in the road and a car ran over him. And now he was lying on the road halfway in front of a school, halfway up Clifton Road. So she tells the doctor to hurry. I was there within 3 minutes. As I bent over the dusty little body stretched on the pavement, I knew there was nothing I could do. So when the doctor reached there within 3 minutes, he found that there was nothing he could do because the situation was really bad. "I'll take him back to the surgery and get some saline into him, Mrs. Donovan," I said. "But I'm afraid he's had a massive internal hemorrhage. Did you see what happened exactly?" And here the doctor says that he will take the dog to the surgery and give him some saline. But he says that he has had a massive internal hemorrhage. Hemorrhage meaning a loss of blood from the body. But still he is asking Mrs. Donovan whether she had seen exactly what had happened. And she gulped, that is, she swallowed, and then she said, "Yes, the wheel went right over him." So she says that the car's wheel had run over the body of the dog. So the doctor now realized it was a ruptured liver for sure. I passed my hands under the little animal and began to lift him gently. But as I did so, the breathing stopped and the eyes stared fixedly ahead. Now the doctor tried to lift the dog. He put his hand under the body and tried to lift him up, but as soon as he lifted the dog, the breathing of the dog stopped. That means the dog had died. Mrs. Donovan sank to her knees, and for a few moments she gently stroked the rough hair of the head and chest. "He's dead, isn't he?" she whispered at last. "I'm afraid he is," I said. So now she came to know that the dog had died, and she suddenly sank down on her knees, and then she asked the doctor that he's dead, isn't it? And he said yes. She got slowly to her feet and stood bewilderedly meaning she stood in a confused way among the little group of bystanders on the pavement. Her lips moved, but she seemed unable to say any more. Now she tried to say something, but the words were not coming out from her mouth. I took her arm, led her over to the car and opened the door. Get in and sit down, I said. I'll run you home. Leave everything to me. So now the doctor knew that she was now very upset. She was in a shocked state. So he caught hold of her arm and took her to the car. Then he opened the door and told her to sit in the car. He was going to reach her home. And then he said, you just leave everything to me. You don't need to worry about anything. I wrapped the dog in my carving overall and laid him in the boot before driving away. Now he made her sit in the car. Then he brought the dead body of the dog, wrapped it in a cloth and put it in the boot. Boot over here means the dicky of the car. It wasn't until we drew up outside Mrs. Donovan's house that she began to weep silently. Now all this while she did not cry, but as soon as she reached home, the car stopped in front of her house. She began to cry, but not as if she was howling, but she cried very silently. I sat there without speaking till she had finished, but the doctor did not interrupt her and waited till she had finished crying. Then she wiped her eyes and turned to me. Do you think he suffered at all? I am certain he didn't. It was all so quick he wouldn't know a thing about it. Now she wanted to know whether the dog had suffered before it died. But the doctor tells her that everything had happened so quickly that there was no time for the dog to suffer at all. She tried to smile. Poor little Rex, I don't know what I'm going to do without him. We have travelled a few miles together, you know. Yes, you have. He had a wonderful life, Mrs. Donovan, and let me give you a bit of advice. You must get another dog. You would be lost without one. Now, she says that this dog of hers, Rex, she says, I don't know she says that she doesn't know what she is going to do without the dog, because she had travelled a lot of distance with this dog, or the dog had accompanied her for a long time and now she didn't know what to do. And the doctor agrees to her, saying that yes, she had, and the dog also had a wonderful life with Mrs. Donovan. And let me give you a bit of advice. Then he says that I am giving you an advice that she should take another dog, because if she did not have a dog for company, she would soon be lost. She shook her head. No, I couldn't. That little dog meant too much to me. I couldn't let another take his place. But she just shook her head and said, no, I don't want another dog, because she did not want any other dog to replace Rex. She did not want any other dog to take the place of Rex. Well, I know that's how you feel just now, but I wish you would think about it. I don't want to seem callous. Callous meaning over here, careless or not caring. Now the doctor says that he tells everyone or gives everyone this advice when they lose their animal, and he says that he knows it is very good advice. Mr. Harriet, I'll never have another one. She shook her head again very decisively. Decisively over here means she had decided that she is not going to have another dog, because she says Rex was my faithful friend for many years and I just want to remember him. He is the last dog I'll ever have. So she says that Rex was a very good friend. He was very faithful to her and she did not want anyone else to take his place. She just wanted to remember him as her last dog. I often saw Mrs. Donovan around the town after this, and I was afraid and I was glad to see she was still as active as ever, though she looked strangely incomplete without the little dog on its lead. But it must have been over a month before I had a chance to speak to her. Now, it was past 1 month since Rex had died, but still the doctor seen Mrs. Donovan moving around in town. But it was now 1 month after Rex had died that he happened to meet her and talk to her. It was on the afternoon that Inspector Halliday of the RSPCA rang me. Mr. Harriet, he said, I would like you to come and see an animal with me, a cruelty case. Now, it was on that afternoon that an inspector known as Inspector Halliday rang up the doctor and told him that he had to come to check a case of cruelty. That is, some cruel thing had been done to an animal and he wanted the doctor to come and check on the dog. So, I hope you have understood till here. Read the lesson and let me know if you have any difficulties.